I think it's a combination of things. I think it can be solved by politicians, and if you look at what's happened in Argentina or El Salvador,
Of course,
you can, and which were in much worse states than England and Britain are, you can have one person come and pretty quickly turn things around, or at least seemingly. We'll see what happens, but certainly it's a pretty incredible start.
In a world where the power of money was tightly held by governments and banks, the global financial system teetered on the edge of collapse in 2008. Chaos reigned as millions lost jobs, homes, and faith in the institutions that were supposed to protect them. But out of the ashes of this economic disaster, a revolutionary idea was born, an idea so radical that it would challenge everything we knew about money and power. This is the story of Bitcoin, a decentralized currency that defied borders, toppled traditional finance, and empowered millions to take control of their wealth.
Funny you should say that. When they announced it was about 8 months ago, I think, that when they announced there was like a £5,000 pay rise, I think to £90,000. I was like, really? They pay that little? So I put out a little tested tweet. I was like, I'd pay these people much more. I'd pay them $500,000. You want to attract the best people.
Yeah, you want to try the best.
If you're leaving school now, leaving university, I think most people with a decent amount of education are thinking, I want to get to a six-figure salary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if your best chance is 90,000 as an MP, you're probably going to avoid that.
Yeah.
As governments scrambled to print more money, Bitcoin emerged as the antidote to a broken system, one that would change the world forever. And now, as the dust settles, we ask, can a digital currency truly transform the future of finance? At the time, the world was reeling from the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Banks had gambled with people's savings, entire nations were drowning in debt, and millions lost their jobs, their homes, and their livelihoods. Trust in the traditional financial system was shattered. People were angry and desperate, but they didn't know where to turn. It was in this moment of uncertainty that Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous cryptographer, published a white paper that would quietly set the stage for a global financial revolution. The white paper, titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, was short, just 9 pages long, but its ideas were profound. In it, Satoshi proposed a system where people could send money directly to one another without relying on banks or intermediaries. Instead of trusting a central authority to keep track of transactions, Bitcoin would use a decentralized network of computers, all working together to maintain a shared, immutable ledger known as the blockchain. For the first time in history, there was a way for people to control their own money, free from the interference of governments, corporations, and banks. At first, few people paid attention. In the early days of Bitcoin, it was mostly the domain of cryptography enthusiasts, tech geeks, and libertarians who dreamed of a world where financial power wasn't concentrated in the hands of a few. But these early adopters saw something that most others didn't: the potential for Bitcoin to fundamentally change the way money worked. In January 2009, Satoshi mined the first Bitcoin block, known as the Genesis block. Embedded in this block was a message that hinted at Bitcoin's purpose. The Times 3 John 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was a clear reference to the ongoing financial crisis and a sign that Bitcoin was meant to be an alternative to the failing traditional financial system. In these early days, Bitcoin was worth next to nothing. Those who mined it on their home computers could earn hundreds or even thousands of Bitcoin in a single day, but it wasn't worth much more than a few cents. Some people dismissed it as a passing fad, a strange experiment that would never catch on. But a small, growing community believed in its potential. They saw Bitcoin not just as a new form of money, but as a way to wrest control from the powerful institutions that had long dominated global finance. Then in 2010, something remarkable happened. A man named Laszlo Hanyek made history by completing the first ever commercial transaction using Bitcoin. He traded 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. At the time, it seemed like a reasonable deal. Those 10,000 Bitcoin were worth about $25. But as Bitcoin's value began to rise in the years that followed, this purchase became legendary. People would look back at it and marvel at the fact that those 10,000 Bitcoin would one day be worth millions of dollars. As Bitcoin gained traction, its price began to climb. In 2011, it hit $1 for the first time. It was a small milestone, but it marked the beginning of Bitcoin's journey into the wider world. More and more people started to pay attention. Developers began building on the technology, exchanges were established where people could buy and sell Bitcoin, and the community grew. However, Bitcoin's rise was not without challenges. As the price increased, so did scrutiny from governments, regulators, and the media. Bitcoin was often associated with illicit activities, as its decentralized nature made it a popular choice for those looking to move money anonymously. The infamous dark web marketplace Silk Road, where users could buy illegal goods using Bitcoin, became a focal point of criticism. The media labeled Bitcoin as a currency for criminals, and governments around the world debated how to regulate it. But Bitcoin was resilient. Even after the FBI shut down Silk Road and seized its Bitcoin holdings, the technology continued to evolve. Developers worked tirelessly to improve its security, scalability, and user-friendliness. Exchanges became more sophisticated, and businesses around the world began to accept Bitcoin as payment. People started to see Bitcoin not just as a currency, but as a store of value, a kind of digital gold. By 2013, Bitcoin had crossed the $1,000 mark for the first time, and the world took notice. It was no longer just a fringe experiment. It was becoming a legitimate asset class. Venture capital flowed into the space, and startups emerged to build tools and services around Bitcoin. But with success came volatility. The price of Bitcoin swung wildly, sometimes doubling or halving in a matter of days. Some people got rich overnight, while others lost fortunes just as quickly. Yet through it all, Bitcoin continued to grow. Its decentralized nature made it immune to the whims of any single government or institution. It belonged to the people who used it, who mined it, who held it. And it was more than just a currency, it was a movement. In places like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, where hyperinflation had rendered local currencies worthless, Bitcoin provided a lifeline. It allowed people to protect their savings from government mismanagement and corruption. As Bitcoin's influence spread, its potential to disrupt traditional finance became clear. Major financial institutions, once dismissive of Bitcoin, began to take it seriously. Hedge funds started buying Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, and companies like Tesla and Square added Bitcoin to their balance sheets. Governments, too, began to recognize the power of Bitcoin. In 2021, El Salvador became the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, sparking a wave of interest from other nations.
I think it's a combination of things. I think it can be solved by politicians, and if you look at what's happened in Argentina or El Salvador,
Of course,
and which were in much worse states than England and Britain are, you can have one person come and pretty quickly turn things around, or at least seemingly. We'll see what happens, but certainly it's a pretty incredible start. So in that sense, that suggests to me that it's almost part of the great men of history theory. Like actually it can be turned around by great men. I think for Britain, you're suggesting might turn it around, but we need we need people to stand up, speak up, stop being scared of what they think. There's such little talent in Westminster. Because, well, there's various reasons why it doesn't attract talent. Maybe paying politicians more might attract them.
But for all its success, Bitcoin's journey was far from over. Critics still questioned its long-term viability, pointing to its energy consumption, regulatory uncertainty, and volatility. They argued that Bitcoin was a bubble destined to pop. But Bitcoin supporters saw things differently. To them, Bitcoin was not just a speculative asset. It was a new way of organizing the world's financial systems. The real power of Bitcoin lay in its decentralization. Unlike traditional currencies, which could be printed or devalued at the whim of central banks, Bitcoin had a fixed supply. There would only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence, and this scarcity made it a powerful hedge against inflation. As central banks around the world printed trillions of dollars to prop up their economies, Bitcoin stood as a stark contrast. An uninflatable currency governed by code, not by human intervention. By 2024, Bitcoin had firmly established itself as the world's first decentralized global currency. It had gone from being a niche experiment to a trillion-dollar asset class used by millions of people around the world. Financial institutions had to adapt to this new reality, offering Bitcoin-related services and products to their clients. Bitcoin had become a legitimate store of value, much like gold, but with the added benefit of being easily transferable and divisible. In the world of finance, Bitcoin's impact was undeniable, but its true legacy was much deeper. It had shown people that there was an alternative to the status quo. Bitcoin had created a new kind of financial freedom, one where individuals had full control over their money without needing permission from banks or governments. It had given rise to a new generation of innovators, builders, and thinkers who believed in a more open and inclusive financial system. But even as Bitcoin gained mainstream acceptance, its roots as a tool for the people remained strong. In countries facing authoritarian regimes, economic crises, or severe inflation, Bitcoin continued to serve as a lifeline for those who needed it most. It allowed individuals to escape oppressive financial systems, store their wealth securely, and send money across borders without fear of censorship or seizure. The world had changed, and Bitcoin was at the center of that change. It had brought financial sovereignty to millions, challenged the very concept of money, and laid the foundation for a decentralized future. And yet, despite its successes, Bitcoin's story was far from over. Its future was still being written by the millions of people who used it, mined it, and believed in its promise. Bitcoin was no longer just a digital currency. It had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of possibility in a world where financial systems were constantly evolving. It stood as a reminder that money could be more than just a tool of the powerful. It could be a tool for everyone. And as the world continued to grapple with the challenges of the 21st century, one thing was clear. Bitcoin had changed everything, and there was no turning back. Like and subscribe to bring good luck and blessings for your financial future and get this crypto bull run going.